2 years of nights have turned me into a nocturnal animal. Fear is a tool. They think I'm hiding in the shadows. But I am the shadows.
A couple years after watching The Batman, there are still lines and images I can't get out of my head. The movie is far from perfect, but despite its flaws, there is something special about it, and I've finally put my finger on what it is. The Batman is a horror movie. It isn't just a horror movie, but that's the extra spice Matt Reeves adds to a stew of genres. Sometimes it feels like an old Warner Brothers gangster movie, sometimes a political thriller, and sometimes it's Scorsese-inspired crime grit, especially when Bruce dons his drifter disguise from the Year One comics. In this video, I'll break down how Reeves masterfully applied horror technique to give the Batman its special vibe. The thing which makes the Batman special isn't just mood or atmosphere, but the fact that they aren't static. Combining these subgenres in a way that feels organic makes the movie feel dynamic. And then there's that extra thing which makes this flavor of Batman so unique among the long history of on-screen Batmen. Horror. The movie opens from the point of view of a killer, complete with heavy breathing, reminiscent of Black Christmas or Halloween. Once Riddler gets into Don Mitchell's home, the flicker of light which reveals him standing behind the mayor, the high-pitched strings of the score that replace the silence. It's all borrowed from the language of horror movies. Even the basic structure of a cold open focused on a kill before meeting the main character is something often used in slashers as a way to set the mood and establish the danger to come. Nolan did the same thing in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, opening on the villain, but his sequences were more action thriller in tone versus the Batman's more horrific opening. Nolan's kills are also cleaner. Just think of Dark Knight Rises, where guns are fired and bodies just fall with hardly a drop of blood, versus Riddler's up-close and personal kill, frantically clubbing Mitchell over and over with a carpet tucker. All of Batman's villains have been brutal in their own way, but rarely has that brutality been so in focus and violent. Maybe with the exception of the time Joker fried that guy and turned him into a smoldering corpse. If you walked away from the movie after this opening scene, you might think it was the start of a horror thriller about a serial killer. Though, to be fair, you'd have to be pretty dumb not to realize it's a Batman movie, since you can hear mentions of Gotham and even Thomas Wayne on the TV. I want to meet the idiot who watches the first 5 minutes and walks away declaring, "The new Batman movie is weird. It doesn't even have Batman in it. It's about a carpet tucker killer who wears a green bag on his head." To be fair, the whole point is that Reeves is borrowing the language of horror movies. In fact, this kill even occurs on Halloween night, inspired by the classic Batman limited series The Long Halloween. At around 5 minutes in, we cue Batman's voiceover, which we learn is actually the words he's writing in a daily journal. Some of those words, 2 years of night have turned me into a nocturnal animal. Our first introduction to the idea that Bruce Wayne has been lost to the mask. He's hardly human anymore, but instead a bat-shaped monster. It's not a new idea, but it's taken further in Reeves' take than previous films. In this iteration, Bruce Wayne is hardly a character. Outside the cowl, he's subdued. We never see him turn on the playboy persona like so many Bruce Waynes before him. He has an Alfred, but few other personal relationships. No Lucius Fox, Rachel Dawes, or Vicky Vale. The closest we get is Selina Kyle, who knows Batman, not Bruce. And Reeves enhances the theme with that extra horror spice. Most iterations shy away from the black makeup that you know he wears, otherwise the eye holes on his mask would look pretty ridiculous. Reeves' take embraces the makeup, and as a result, the first time Bruce takes off the cowl, he genuinely looks like a nocturnal animal, like a mutant who lives in isolation beneath Gotham City. On the commentary track, Reeves even mentions that Bruce's journaling was partly inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the way Jekyll kept a journal to chart his experiments and keep track of what becoming Mr. Hyde is doing to him. Later in the movie, he finds out that his mother, Martha, formerly Martha Arkham, was in and out of institutions her whole life after losing a father to her mother's murder-suicide. How much of this did Bruce inherit? How much does he have in common with the villains he's put away in Arkham? Later on the commentary track, over the scene of Bruce visiting his parents' untouched bedroom, Reeves describes Wayne as a lonely vampire stuck in time, surrounded by this abandoned castle. The first time I saw this movie, I remember having exactly that reaction. Seeing this mutant version of Wayne, I thought of classic monsters, like Dracula living in that isolated castle in the Carpathian Mountains. The high collar of this movie's batsuit also helps with the Dracula comparison. As a longtime horror fan and Batman fan looking for something different, it's a nice change of pace. But why? Why does this choice to use horror feel so appropriate for the character? On the commentary track, Reeves brings up the idea of point of view several times, how it was a core idea he wanted to explore in the film. Sometimes he'll literally put you in a character's point of view, like the shot which opens the movie from Riddler's binoculars, or the camera eye contacts Batman has Selina wear. But his exploration of POV isn't just literal in terms of where you place the camera, but it's also a core theme of the movie. Batman and Selina both grew up orphans, but one had means and the other didn't. How does that shape their point of view? When they go after Carmine Falcone, Bruce wants to put him through the legal system. Selina doesn't trust that system and would prefer instead to kill him. Riddler and Batman both have similar goals, to free Gotham of corruption, but they have very different points of view. Batman sees him as an enemy, while Riddler sees Batman as a friend and collaborator. Like Selina and Bruce, he was also an orphan and grew up bitter, especially after Thomas Wayne's empty promises of renewal. Like Bruce, he wields his anger as a weapon, but with a more brutal and, by the end, apparently less targeted approach. And how do things change from behind a mask? Does the feeling of anonymity empower you, and what will you do with that power? Despite the clunkiness of the third act reveal of Riddler's online cult-like followers, I think this was an extension of that theme, that the anonymity offered online is its own sort of mask, making it the perfect place to stoke people's darker impulses. Like Nolan, I think Reeves was aiming for something relatively grounded, but a key difference is that Reeves wanted to present the story through a more subjective lens. That manifests literally in terms of where he places the camera, like this incredible shot from Penguin's POV as Batman walks toward him after flipping his car. The subjective lens also manifests in the themes, with Reeves' exploration of the characters' different relationships with Gotham. And all of this is further enhanced by tone. When this movie borrows the language of horror films, it does it to convey a feeling that further puts you into a character's subjective experience. Bruce looks like a vampire in an old, isolated castle. This strips away a lot of the glamour of being Batman. Reeves wants us to feel the cost of the path Bruce has chosen, so it should feel unpleasant. Horror does that. Going back to the opening sequence, there's a moment where a masked criminal looks down a darkened alley, worried a bat-shaped monster will step out of it, and soon he does emerge from the shadows, a creature of the night. Reeves shoots him like the villain of a monster movie because he should feel frightening and intimidating. That's how Gotham's criminal element sees him. But that's how civilians see him too, setting up another theme of Bruce learning to embrace something other than vengeance. Or back to the shot from Penguin's perspective. Leading up to that moment, even the Batmobile is introduced in horror mode. Reeves specifically mentioned that in this depiction of the vehicle, he was inspired by John Carpenter's Christine, adapted from the Stephen King novel, a story about an evil car with a mind of its own. Specifically, Reeves calls out this shot, where the car is on fire while stalking its prey, and it's recreated in The Batman, where the Batmobile leaps through the flames. And before that, it's introduced leaping out of the shadows, just like Batman himself was introduced earlier in the movie. And once Penguin is on the ground, the POV shot of Batman looking like a demon stepping out of hell. How about Batman's point of view? What would it be like to go face to face with the mad criminals who comprise his rogues gallery? It would be deeply unpleasant and unsettling, which Reeves achieves by attaching symbols of horror to the villain of this film. There's Riddler's introduction, which makes him feel like the villain of a slasher. There are his brutal methods of execution, which feel borrowed from a Saw movie, especially when it comes to Commissioner Savage, who he's trapped inside a contraption filled with feral rats. Villains in prior Batman movies have shown all depths of evil, but rarely has the movie so lingered on their brutality. Throughout the movie, Riddler is less modeled after the villains of action thrillers and more after the stuff of horror. Of course, his work with puzzles and ciphers is directly influenced by the real-life Zodiac Killer, and as part of his prep for writing the movie, Matt Reeves read the book Mindhunter, a book written by retired FBI agent John E. Douglas, who spent decades interviewing serial killers to develop criminal personality profiling. Reeves attempted to use this reading to inform Batman's point of view in the movie, to answer the question, what would it really feel like to confront his rogues gallery? When Nygma is finally caught, he's found sitting in a cafe waiting for the police. He tells them he just ordered a slice of pumpkin pie. It's a strange, uncanny thing to say for a man at the center of so much killing, and it's based on a true story. When the Golden State Killer was arrested, he told the police that he had a roast in the oven. The officers assured him they could take care of it. The movie nearly borrowed a little from Silence of the Lambs, too, where Batman would have come to the asylum seeking help from one killer to catch another. The scene was shot but ultimately left out of the movie, where Batman would come to Arkham seeking guidance from Joker. Horror is used throughout the movie to enhance subjective point of view, whenever appropriate. Another example would be when Bruce visits the Gotham orphanage. When he steps into the derelict mansion, it feels like a haunted place. You hear high-pitched strings, the kind you'd normally hear in the score of a ghost story, and in place of ghouls for the jump scare, it has dropheads who have made this place a home. Visiting the former Wayne Manor, a place Bruce would associate with his lost parents, would be an unsettling experience. It would be a scene out of a horror movie. In the movie's climax at Gotham Square Garden, Reeves again talks about using horror. He goes on to describe how this isn't a hero comes in to save the day scene. These are dark circumstances where Batman comes in like a horror figure to unleash. These are circumstances of his own making. His masked vigilantism inspired Riddler, and he missed all the clues pointing to this attempted mass murder event. Reeves describes this scene as the crucible Batman must be forged in. He took inspiration for it from Darwin Cook's Batman comic, Ego, where Bruce's mind is fractured, and he ends up facing Batman as a beast separate from himself. In this comic, Batman is rendered as a being separate from Bruce, and horror imagery is used heavily in the comic to portray that beast as appropriately frightening, and one that Bruce can lose control of if he isn't careful. In the Batman's climax, that's nearly what happens. He almost kills someone, and almost punches Gordon in the face, until he finally comes to his senses. And then, when a live wire threatens to make contact with the water below, killing the many half submerged, Batman suddenly has to save lives, not by unleashing vengeance, but by risking his life. He cuts the wires and takes an electric blast himself, but of course survives the fall. And then, rising from the water, turned red by his flare, like a bat rising out of hell, he offers the civilians help. As described in the screenplay, Bella and the group hesitate, intimidated by Batman's haunting, wraith-like presence in the flare's light, all except a boy, Mitchell's 10-year-old son, who reaches his hands up, unafraid. Batman pulls him up. He turns to Bella, offering a hand again. She takes it. As she clings to him, the others begin climbing out too. Batman comes out of this crucible with the realization that vengeance turned him and others into a monster. Now he will look to be something more, something to give people hope. The first time I watched The Batman, I saw that it was stylistic, and I could pick out some imagery that felt particularly dark. It somehow elevated the movie for me, and now looking back, I can better understand why. It enhances our ability to experience the story from the character's point of view. And specifically, it helps us feel Bruce Wayne's subjective journey into and out of darkness. Although DC has struggled with its movie output, one place I think they deserve a lot of praise is in their willingness to let filmmakers experiment. Movies like The Batman, Joker, and especially Joker 2, for all its controversy, prove that no studio heads are telling filmmakers what their movies have to be. Further proof of that is the upcoming Clayface standalone, where it seems DC Studios might take an even bigger step in the horror direction, because this one is being helmed by Mike Flanagan. He's the creator behind Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor, and Midnight Mass. He's also the director of Dr. Sleep and the upcoming Exorcist film. Previously, he talked about wanting to make a Clayface movie, and at the time said he would approach it as a horror, thriller, tragedy. My only hope is that he truly tests the limits of DC Studios' willingness to be hands-off by making the movie entirely in claymation to match the Clay theme. Hey, if they can make movies out of Legos now, why not? Anyway, I'm Gil, thank you for watching, and see you on the next One Take.